Hopefully your fantasy world is going well. I took a couple of losses in my league this week, but it's a-okay. Just few injuries, nothing to worry about, but you may need waiver wire transactions this week. So I'm going to give you a few guys to maybe help you out. Keep in mind the criteria for this list. They have to be owned in less than 50% of leagues, and I'm using ESPN as my standard here, as far as I'm assuming a majority y'all play on ESPN, or at least through ESPN. But yeah, without further ado, what's crack-lacking? It's your boy Broshmo, just in case you did not know. So go ahead, become a bro and subscribe. Leave that nice thumbs up if you enjoy the content. It's always much appreciated, much obliged. I got a ton of draft content on the channel, and more coming. I'm gonna have my overrated prospects later out maybe in the next day or two, as well as an overall view of what's been going on in college football and how it looks for the 2021 draft, with just a little preview of the 2022 draft as far as the prospects. But let's go ahead and let's dive into the dang thing. We're gonna start at quarterback with Jared Freakin Goff. He's only owned in 37.4 leagues as of right now, and you know what? He's been playing good football, at least ever since that stinker against the Cowboys in week 1. He's put up 23 and 26 points in back-to-back weeks in PPR leagues. And you know what? He's got juicy matchups coming up if you need a quarterback. I mean, he has the Giants, Washington. Keep in mind that San Fran in week 6. This is a beat-up defense. So, I mean, he has future matchups against Miami, and I mean, he will have the Jets eventually this season. So he's not a bad guy, even just to stash on your bench for selected matchups. Let's go ahead and talk about Ryan Fitzmagic himself. He's an enigma. He is a variable. You don't know what you're going to get from him, but it's been pretty darn solid. And you know what? Last 2 weeks, 24 points, 23 points. He's really put it together. He's got a juicy matchup against Seattle, which you wouldn't say that it's necessarily a juicy matchup, because you think of Seattle and you think, oh, they got a lot of quality players. But I mean, that's secondary. It's not really much of the secondary's fault. It really is the lack of a pass rush on that squad. But they are currently the 30th against opposing quarterbacks in fantasy. The lack of a pass rush kind of is the thing. The Dolphins, if they want to stay in this game against a high octane Russell Wilson, they will need to pass the ball. They're not going to get it done with Myles Gaskin. It's just the truth. So if you really need someone to pivot from, you got a tough matchup. Ryan Fitzpatrick is not a bad option. He's only owned in 5% of leagues, so why not? And those are the only two quarterbacks I really feel comfortable recommending to people right now, to you. And it doesn't get this is going to be extremely deep this week as far as waiver wire, because a lot of good players getting picked up. On to the running back situation. I only had 2 guys on this list that I feel comfortable with, one being Rex Burkhead. He absolutely went off. If you ended up snagging him on your squad, man, you loved it. Even Sony Michelle had a really good game against the Raiders, and they do have a pretty solid matchup against the Chiefs next week. They are going to have to score points, so I really expect the Patriots to really utilize the pass game, which, guess what? That's Rex Burkhead's kind of bread and butter, especially with James White out. Keep in mind that's something you need to just stay aware of. See when James White will return to the team, because that will completely take away from the lore, just what makes Rex Burkhead a very attractive, a very sexy option. He did have 13 touches, 6 rushes, and 7 receptions. The receiving aspect is what's really attractive. Especially if you're in full PPR leagues, he does get a lot of actually the goal line, or at least goal line slash red zone work, you would think it would go to Sony Michelle, but Sony Michelle, he's just not moving the ball. He did see 13 carries in his own right, but Burkhead was the one really getting it done in the passing game. Again, 7 receptions. You can't ignore that. And then Jeff Wilson Jr., and it's kind of, if you start him, I ended up having to start him in the league because I had Mostert out, and McKinnon, he was already on someone's squad. So it was the running back position was pretty poached. So I went with the gamble. I went with Wilson, and I'm glad I did because he put out a pretty good game. Not necessarily rushing, but he did get 12 carries. It was the receiving where, I mean, the touchdown in the rushing game obviously helped, but even in the receiving game, dude, 3 receptions for 53 yards. Like, I will take that. He's got a good matchup against Philly next week. And the thing is, you got Tevin Coleman. He's on IR. You have McKinnon with a potential rib injury. Don't know if he'll be good to go. And then we don't know if Raheem Mostert is going to be good to go for week 4. So you're looking at a very currently thin running back room, with Jeff Wilson might be the guy getting a bulk of the work there, especially with Nick Mullins still at quarterback. They are going to want to, I mean, this is just a part of how Kyle Shanahan does it. He loves to run the football. So, I mean, even if, I mean, I would check if McKinnon is available, then like if he's good to go for this week, then I still feel good about Wilson. But if Mostert is fine, then I don't like him being the third running back in that potential rotation. So just kind of something to keep, I guess, aware of. Let's go over the wide receivers where it's a bit more fruitful, and I got 3 rookies on here. I know that's kind of wild, but we're gonna start with Corey Davis. As long as AJ Brown is out, he's gonna again. It's not necessarily an attractive pick, but you know, he's getting targets. He is essentially the lead wide receiver. I know Jonnu Smith is probably getting a bit more looks, but he is, for all intents and purposes, the go-to receiver here. They got a tough matchup against the Steelers, so that's a game they will probably need to pass the ball successfully. It's going to be a tough game for Derrick Henry to get going. That is a very scary front 7. I mean, dude, look what they did to Saquon Barkley. So they will need to utilize the passing game. So Corey Davis, I think, is a fine flex option. Alan Lazard, a bit more tantalizing in my opinion. Even if Devontae Adams is back, Alan Lazard, he is the wide receiver too. He sees significantly more snaps in week 1 and week 2 than MVS. So he is the wide receiver too, and we've seen what he could. He is a deep play threat all in himself, dude. He is very, very, very good. And even, like I said, even with Adams back, I feel comfortable with this guy in my lineup. I mean, he saw 8 targets last week with Adams out. He's still in the games where Adams did play. He had 4 and 5 targets, and he's very good at converting, like turning these targets into receptions. He has, I'm just saying, dude's a very deep play threat. And again, I don't mind starting him as a flex option in leagues. And then we got Justin Jefferson, who I think is a good guy to stash right now. They do have a juicy matchup against the Texans, so it'll be interesting to see how, like, if he will get those 9 targets that he got last week. I mean, I know they like to lean on Thielen, but it will be interesting if this breakout game, if it's much more. I'm still I would be hesitant to start him, but he does have Seattle after Houston. He's a guy I don't mind stashing if you really have to, if you really need a flex. I think he's a good option. I like Brandon Ayuk a lot. Only owned in 16.6% of leagues. What Debo being out, Nick Mullins really relied on this guy, and I mean, they used him in very creative ways. He had 3 rushes, going for 31 yards and a touchdown. He was targeted 8 times. So in a game against Philly, that could be a close game. I mean, Keep in mind, this is a very battered and injured San Francisco team, so it might be a close game against Philly, who's been struggling in their own right to get any semblance of a victory this year. I mean, they just got a tie, so I don't know. Maybe Carson Wentz will finally put it all together. Maybe that offensive line for the Eagles will play better, but regardless, I think Ayuk could be a very fine flex option. And then Higgins is a guy I would stash on my bench. I won't just start right away, because he did something that AJ Green hasn't been able to do the past couple of weeks, and turn targets into fantasy points. I mean, AJ Green's been getting a ton of targets, but he just hasn't been able to come down with them, whether, you know, it's drop, overthrow. Like, he's just been struggling, unfortunately. But Higgins, I think, provides a very interesting option here. He got nine targets, turned that into 5 receptions for 40 yards, but it was 2 touchdowns. Keep in mind, this guy's got some size. He will be a red zone threat, especially now with Uzomah gone for the season. So they will be, you'd be like, oh, well, they got Drew Sample. Tell me how well that worked out last game. So this is a team that will need to pass the football to try to win games. I mean, Burrow's been putting up having to put up monster attempts. So honestly, any investment in that offense might be a good investment. Again, I know it's a good matchup against Jacksonville. I would be extremely hesitant to start him. This is more of a stash and kind of wait and see. So let's go to the tight ends, and I only got 3 guys for you this week. We're gonna start with Eric Ebron. As long as Deontay Johnson is, if he's going to be out this week, because keep in mind, concussion sometimes takes multiple weeks to come back from those. So, because, I mean, the NFL don't play around with those anymore. So, he became a big benefactor of Johnson not being on the field. He saw 7 targets, went for 5 receptions, 52 yards, 1 touchdown. So, in fantasy football, it's pretty hard to find a consistent tight end to start on the weekly basis. If you're one of those guys streaming tight ends, he might be a good option to pick up. Dalton Schultz is, to me, really turned into a much safer option. I know he didn't really put up the points this week, only 4 fantasy points, but it was off 6 targets, and it was 4 receptions for 48 yards. He's got a very good matchup against Cleveland. If you are looking for stream starters, I think he would be a solid one, only owned in 24.1% of leagues. Keep in mind, the week before, he had 9 receptions for 88 yards and a touchdown. Granted, they were playing from behind, so they were doing a lot of throwing. So Dallas, I mean, Dak, he likes his tight ends, so I think if you're streaming tight ends, he's a solid option. Then we also have Jimmy Graham, and this might be a more stash and see, because the Indianapolis Colts matchup, they're actually one of the better teams at defending against the tight end. They're actually the best in terms of not giving fantasy points up to the tight end. But now with Nick Foles at quarterback, I think Graham is a good option to stash, wait and see how his production comes around, especially if you're kind of sitting there at tight end I just don't like. I'm just kind of in the streaming paradise, I guess, right now. Or if you maybe a Jared Cook owner and you don't know if he's gonna be back. I mean, Kittle, I fully expect to be back, so you shouldn't be in trouble there. But with Foles now at command, there, he saw 7. The dude saw 7 targets, so I'm very intrigued. I'm very interested. So I think he would be a good option. But let me know what you think, or if you have any questions, go ahead, throw them down in the comment section below. And as always, that's it for the video. Now I could say it. As always, till next time, you be easy, my friends. Later.